Welcome to the Oddsbreakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 15 of 2026. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Oddsbreakers. Follow us on social media / the Oddsbreakers. This episode is being brought to you by FanDuel Sports, a proud partner with March Madness. And if you'd like to get in the game, FanDuel has some massive promotions. Click on FanDuel.com, sign in with an account, get your sign-up bonus, and grab a boost for your next play. If you'd like to support the Oddsbreakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, become a member. Beginning for winning cappers, you get the premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. If nothing else, please visit the Oddsbreakers and become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. It's all about college basketball, my friends. It is rolling. And, had kind of a tough go at it with the last few days in the bad beats. Nebraska, Purdue dead under till went overtime. Cal plus 5.5, looking great until double overtime, losing by 7. So you have to have thick skin to beat college basketball, or actually to bet college basketball, I'm trying to say. To beat college basketball, you have to be good. You have to get ahead of line moves, and you have to have some luck. But we also have to have some great handicaps, and that is why we are bringing in Paul Stone from VSiN and Paul Stone Sports to break down a massive weekend of college basketball. So we're going to cover everything we normally do. But before we do that, I'm obviously going to get into some college basketball ATS and totals, trends. But even before that, it's true what they say, the NFL never sleeps. The Super Bowl odds are out for next year, and there's some couple discrepancies. I just want to quick talk about it for a minute here. I don't understand a few of these lines. Okay. Now, the whole, narrative is the Bears had an easier schedule, got the Packers when they are not as healthy at the end. Lions were not healthy a large portion of that year. It had a first-place schedule. Now the Bears are going to have a first-place schedule. And all that is true. The Vikings could be better too. But what is the reason that they became better this year? Was it because of all the players? I don't think so. It was because of Ben Johnson. And if you believe in a coach like Ben Johnson, you buy into the fact that he's going to improve them, right? I think that they are the second or third best team in the NFC North from a power perspective. Sure, they beat the Packers a couple times. I thought the Packers were a little bit better from a power rating. I thought the Lions probably slightly better than the Bears last year, even though the Lions had that first place schedule and had some bad luck. But the team that's on the up, I would say, is the Bears, as I believe they have the better coach now than the Lions. And if you look at the numbers, the Bears at 27-1 to win the Super Bowl is not even close to where the Packers are at 13-1 and where the Lions are at 16-1. And let's just look at these tough first place schedules. The Bears will have to play an AFC team. They're going to have to play the Jaguars for their at-large because they're already playing the Patriots and the Buffalo Bills, being that they have them for their AFC at-large schedule. Not at-large, I should have said AFC division schedule because that's the division that they play. So they at least get Miami and the Jets. But they got the Jaguars at large. Is that much harder than the second place Texans or the third place Colts when Danny Dimes is back? I'm not so sure about that. When it comes to playing the Seattle Seahawks, yeah, that's tough. It's an away game. But is the Packers going to have it that much easier with the Rams? And are the Lions going to have it that much easier with the San Francisco 49ers? Probably not. The Bears are going to get the Panthers. I probably would rather play the Panthers than Atlanta at this point, or maybe even Tampa Bay. Is that going to matter so much? Probably not. And finally, the Bears get the Eagles at home. The Bears beat the Eagles last year. Okay. And the Eagles may be good. They have some talent there, but they also have some serious offensive line issues, and some guys might be retiring. So you got the Cowboys there as well that have a powerful offense at least. Hopefully they fix their defense. And then I got to tell you that the Commanders with Jaden Daniels and looking for revenge this year, and the Giants now with a great coach, I think that AFC East is going to be very, very interesting this year. But man, it would not shock me to see the Bears come out. And the NFC is kind of the more loaded conference this year, in my opinion. They also get the extra home game. So at 27-1, when you see all these other teams at lower numbers, like the Eagles at 15-1, of course, Seattle and the Rams, 950-1 in DraftKings, plus 750, plus 800 on FanDuel, is definitely your rightful favorites. But Baltimore and Buffalo being third. Buffalo has not looked good lately. They have a new coach. Baltimore, of course, has the new coach. There's just a lot of questions when it comes to the AFC. If I was looking in the AFC, I'm looking at the Cincinnati Bengals at 30-1. Why are they 30-1? Well, Kiev, because their coach sucks. I agree. Zach Taylor sucks. But Joe Burrow is so damn good that sometimes that just doesn't matter. And it didn't matter when he went to the Super Bowl against the Rams and probably should have won, minus a couple of those tough calls at the end. The Bengals can win that division with McCarthy there, and who knows what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. Cleveland's a gimme. That's a win, 2 wins. The Ravens, we just don't know. I guess maybe they get that defense fixed with a defensive coach now, but I'm just not so sure that the Bengals should not be the favorite in that division. Not much less 30-1 to win the Super Bowl, 13-1 to win the conference. So I'm looking at that as well. I'm looking at the Bears and the Bengals. If I had to look at one more team, it'd be the Jaguars at 20-1 or 22-1. I just haven't seen enough out of Trevor. I mean, you should have beat the Bills that week. If the Jaguars beat the Bills, I think they probably beat the Patriots. So that's kind of interesting too. If I was going to look in the AFC, I'm sick of these same teams. Kansas City with Mahomes' torn ACL. That's going to be weird. That's going to be rough. That defense is getting old. So is Spags. The Patriots, I guess, up and coming, but they were just so fraudulent last year. The Broncos, Bo Nix just skating by. I don't know, man. I would look at the Bengals, and I would definitely look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And actually, I'm going to throw $50 on the Bengals and the Bears each. Why not? I'm going to throw some money down on them just at these massive numbers, see what happens throughout the summer. But, the whole narrative is, the Bears are have it had it too easy. Maybe so. But, man, with what Jackson Dart did over there, and now the Giants are going to have a real coach, I'm pretty tempted to look at the Giants as well. So those are my thoughts for a little NFL, these numbers coming out. Just head scratching to me because I do believe in Ben Johnson. And as a Bears fan, Caleb, you have to play better for 3 quarters of the game, for the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter, but that's what your offseason's for. You're supposed to be completely focused on that. The Bears do have draft picks. They can make some moves and fix this team. Ben Johnson needs to be a big part of it because I don't think Ryan Poles knows what he's doing. But at the same time, hard schedule or not, every schedule in the NFC is going to be hard.
Hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no.
All right, let's talk a little college basketball, ATS, and totals. We always start with the ATS here. Let's see if that freaking Portland team is still hanging up on top here. No, Stephen F. Austin, 18-5. That's only because Portland State, though, is 14-4-1. Just more swings at the bat for 78.3% Stephen F. Austin. Sam Houston, 16-5. Man, why do I keep forgetting to bet those teams? Eastern Michigan, 18-6. Mercer, 17-6. Miami, Ohio, still creeping. 15-6. Fresno, St. Louis, 14-7-2. Fresno, 16-7, I should say. Long Beach State, 14-7-1. How about Kansas and Nova? Both 16-8. Arkansas, 16-8. That's interesting. You got DePaul there, 15-8-2, winning by a basket at the end of the game. Navy, 15-8-1. Valpo, 15-8-1. And Buffalo, Hofstra, Stony Brook, and West Georgia, 15-8. Let's go to the worst covering teams in the land. Kansas City, 5-16. Texas Southern, 5-15. Florida Gulf Coast, 6-17. UTSA, horrible, 6-16. Then you got Loyola Chicago, 7-18. Oregon, VMI, and Air Force around 17-16. Let's look for bigger names. You got the two Mississippis, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, 8-16 against the spread, terrible. Creighton, 8-16-1, terrible. Marquette, 8-16-1. Georgetown, 8-15. Oklahoma, 8-15-1, who just finally got a win against, was it Vandy or something? Those are your worst covering teams. And now for the totals. And Denver still sitting on top of the crown. 19 overs, 3 unders, 1 push. Providence, 19-6 to the over. Long Beach State, Miami, Ohio, 15-6. Xavier, Monroe, 17-7. Bonaventure and Northeastern, 16-7. Miami, 15-7-1. Cleveland State, 15-7. Some of the bigger names, we'll scroll down and find NC State at 16-9. Notre Dame, 16-9. Duquesne, 14-8. Iowa, 15-9 of the over. Iowa is. That's a tough one. That was freaking Iowa, man. They've been sneaky. And I will say Boston U is 15-9, but plus 10.9 totals margin to the over. That's a pretty big margin there. Obviously, overtime factors into that. That's why, when you use margin, it's a little bit more effective for unders because, they don't factor in overtime at all. Unders, 4-18, and you have Northern Iowa at 8-16. So those are the two big unders teams. Ball State, 6-16. UT Martin, 6-16. Nebraska, 8-16. Delaware State, 4-14. Stonehill, Cincinnati, 7-18. Any big names? Duke is actually 7-17 to the under. Huge under team this year for Duke. Boston College 8-16. Florida 8-15-1. Did Boston College go under yesterday? They did 134. Jesus. I was really looking at that. I should have got on that one. My leans have been great. That's how it is sometimes in college basketball. But anyways, let's talk a little hoops with our wonderful guest, Mr. Paul Stone from VEASAN. Want to be a professional handicapper? Check out theoddsbreakers.com where we now have live odds and pick tracking. Click on live odds pick tracking and you can start tracking your picks partnering with TallySight. Once you develop records and a following, you can use that information to move to the next level, gaining all that experience in your sports betting career. Make sure you check out live odds and pick tracking at theoddsbreakers.com, partnering with TallySight. Now I'm very excited to welcome back a college basketball betting specialist in Paul Stone from Paul Stone Sports and VEASAN. You can follow Paul on X at Paul Stone Sports. Paul, man, it's cold in the United States, but college basketball is heating everybody up. How you been after this crazy football season?
Yeah, I tell you, college football season's a long haul for sure. Starts pretty much year round for myself, but the season itself from late August to late January now. So I guess we've got about 5 months of solid college football, and now it's all pretty much college basketball for guys like myself. And college basketball, man, from a betting perspective, it is it's just a roller coaster. There's peaks and valleys and highs and lows and ebbs and flows is how it goes. I hear people say that saying sometimes, and you've got to have a really good head on your shoulders to deal with all the quote unquote bad beats, and you forget about the good beats. And it's just kind you're betting 7 days a week, it's just a lot of ups and downs. So it's again, it's a roller coaster, but it's a lot of fun, and need to hit a hot streak here. It hadn't been my best college basketball season to date, but I hope that means there'll be some movement to the mean, the historical mean here in the next couple of months. And just all you do is keep working and hoping the results follow suit.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I was just funny. I was just complaining about my bad beats the last 2 nights. So the problem is when you bet unders more than overs, you're prone to it. If you're on the sharper side, variance, you're prone to it. It's just variance destroys all, and it's tough. And but we keep trucking, and it's tougher for a lower volume guy, and just gotta, hopefully we can. I'm confident you and I are gonna bounce right out of it, because we are always on some good sides, and that's what's important. But before we get into little college hoops, I want to talk a little bit about the best teams. I mean, it's funny, you saw Michigan lose to Wisconsin at home, and then but they've been on a tear ever since. And then you just saw Arizona go to Kansas without their best. Well, I guess you call him your best player, their best part-time player, and Peterson, and end up winning against Arizona. I mean, so how do you rank the top 5 teams in college basketball?
Yeah, and I think most people that listen to your podcast, Kiev, can distinguish between traditional AP poll type rankings and power ratings, and I certainly do it from a power rating standpoint. And there are a lot of teams that are pretty similar. I mean, you mentioned the Michigan team. I think a few weeks ago, a lot of people would have power rated Michigan maybe number 1, certainly maybe number 2, but they've showed some chinks in their armor, and seem to have some difficulties in the favorites role. So they've dropped back a little bit. But as far as my power ratings, I have Arizona, even despite the loss at Kansas on the road Monday. I have Arizona number 1. I think they've been have only lost 1 game. I think they've been the best team overall to date with the best overall resume. But at 1A or number 2, defending national champion Florida. I mean, the fact that they are currently number 14 in the Associated Press poll kind of shows you, from a betting perspective anyway, kind of the uselessness of the traditional polls, because they're not the 14th best team in the country. They're much better than that. I mean, Florida had some issues early. They had some injuries, had some guys having to fit into new roles. They lost Walter Clayton Jr., obviously, to the NBA, so they had some big shoes to fill. But, man, when Florida's clicking, they're as good as anybody. So I've got Florida at 2. Then Duke at number 3 with Boozer and company. I think Duke's a team that could certainly challenge and make a run. And then the aforementioned Michigan at number 4. And then a lot of teams could come in at number 5, but I settled with, even though this team not playing really at their best right now, I settled on Illinois at number 5. They're off back-to-back overtime losses at Michigan State and then at home to Wisconsin. But I still like this Illinois team. I just think they're a team that could make some noise, and they don't really have any clear-cut weaknesses, no glaring deficiencies. So I put Illinois at number 5.
Without a doubt, I'm pretty similar. It's funny, people talk about UConn. I'm not super high on UConn either. I go Arizona, Michigan, and I just think Michigan's a little more inconsistent than Arizona, and that's why I really think the title's going to go to one of those 2 teams. Now, would I bet it at minus 110 odds? Not really. But if you threw like a Duke or a Houston or a Florida or an Illinois in there, I would bet it. Give me 3 teams against the rest of them to win it all. I'll take that. Third, it gets a little convoluted because you can make arguments for a lot of teams. I mean, to be honest with you, I have Houston. I just like their defense, and their coach is great right now, and they're very relentless. And I think Houston is 3. I think Florida's 4, and I think Illinois is 5. I agree with pretty much almost what you had there. Who'd you have instead of Houston? It was what was it?
I've got my 5 are Arizona in order: Arizona, Florida, Duke, Michigan and Illinois.
Duke.
But I had Houston and UConn, Houston and UConn right there for the, they could have been as high as 4 really, or at least 5. But Houston and UConn right there with Illinois. Those are teams that certainly have similar resumes.
Without a doubt. So we're close, we're right there. And it's all going to change. There's some really great games coming up this weekend. So we'll see what we think about some of those. I tried to take a shot at Arizona with Oklahoma State. Thought it was a nice look ahead for them, but that didn't matter to them. And I feel like they played better against them than they did at Kansas. So it's just one of those one of those tough situations for me. Let's go to buy low, sell high. And I like to talk about this because it might not be a team we're necessarily betting right away, and maybe we're kind of just keeping our eye on them or keeping our eye on fading them. But do you have anything for this segment?
Yeah, I'll start with sell high, Kiev. I'm going to go to the Big Ten, an exciting team to watch, and I love the mayor, but Nebraska would be a team that I would sell high, and they've started to slip a little bit after that 20-0 start. Obviously, nowhere to go but down when you start 20-0, but they've now lost 3 of their last 4 games. But important to note and fair to note that those losses were to Michigan, Illinois, and Purdue, all by single digits. So not like they're losing to, little sisters of the poor. Those are quality people. But the reason that I am listing Nebraska as my sell high team is more looking ahead to the tournament. Their schedule eases up a little bit down the stretch in the Big Ten. So they're not playing the creme de creme of the league, so to speak, down the stretch in the regular season. But once we get to the tournament, I'm concerned about their heavy reliance on the 3-point shot. If you ask a lot of people who follow college basketball closely, what's Nebraska's primary strength? I think most people would say, or a lot of people would say, 3-point shooting. And when you play in these cavernous type arenas that you do in the NCAA tournament, the sight lines are different. It's tough to live and die and win and rely on that 3-point shot so heavily. And they average 31 attempts a game from the 3-point line. They make 11. They shoot 36%. So they're very proficient at it. But I think for that to kind of be your bread and butter going into the NCAA tournament is kind of a slippery slope. So if you want to talk about that a little bit, or if you want me to go straight to my buy low, just however you want to go.
No, I agree. I think they topped out, and it's time to kind of look somewhere else. They played their asses off, though. I will give them a lot of credit that they played hard. But, once those threes aren't hitting, it's a little different. And, they surprised some teams. I think some teams overlooked them in the past, but now losing 3 of the last 4, tells me I don't think they're necessarily the number 14 team in the nation. Go ahead with buy low.
This team a couple of weeks ago, even a week ago, probably would have maybe not qualified as a buy low. But the Texas A&M Aggies have now lost 3 straight. So this is a Texas A&M team again that had won 10 of its last 11 games and was really kind of starting to show itself, in my opinion, anyway, as a team that could really be one to watch come March Madness. That buckyball style is a relentless, in-your-face, never stop pressuring type defensive approach. Very difficult for some teams to deal with. But since winning 10 of their previous 11 games, their last 3 have not been so kind to the Aggies. They lost by 3 points to Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa, then followed that up by losing 2 straight home games to Florida over this past weekend by 19, and then lost last night, which was Wednesday, February 11th, at home to Missouri by 1 at home there in College Station. So the Aggies have now lost 3 in a row, but I think Texas A&M is a team that you might want to buy low on. I still believe in the Aggies, and I think their unique style of play. There's not a whole lot of college teams in today's game that just pressure you all 94 feet, pressure you off makes, misses, off the bus, whatever. They just press all the time. So I think A&M could be a thorn in somebody's side. So I like them as a buy low team.
Buckyball makes me think of Bucky's gas stations over in Texas over there. I remember when I drove out there, we stopped at one, and it was like stopping at a giant Walmart with like the 300 gas pumps. I was really confused, but it was cool stuff that they had. It was definitely different and a great experience, and really good barbecue too. So I was excited when I ate that. Unique foods for sure. So I don't disagree with that. I like Buckyball, and I like them in the SEC. I think they're doing a great job this year. My buy low is NC State. I like the coach there. I know I don't like some of the stuff he's done in the past, but I think this NC State team ranking in the top 26 is close to right, but I could see them being actually top 18, top 20. They play offense great. They play defense well. They rebound better on defense, which is something I lean towards a little bit more. They have to stop the three. They're coming off a devastating loss to Louisville, and it was a weird one. Louisville they could just throw the ball up, and they just couldn't miss. And this could be a game we're talking about soon. So I know you're going to give me your opinion later on them, but I like what they're doing over there with Will Wade. And what happened to Will Wade? Well, when he went to McNeese, and you liked McNeese last year when we talked. Yeah, he was a good coach there. Look at how he changed that program around. I think the ACC is a little weaker in general, so I'm going to like them probably coming up here for the next few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, NC State, I think in the long run, I mean, you never want to look back on a game and say it was a good thing losing by 41 as they did to Louisville earlier this week. But at the same time, man, they had won. I think going into that game, they had won several games in a row. They'd won on the road, I know, at Clemson, and on the road at another pretty good team. So they were playing really good basketball. So I give a whole lot more credence to NC State's previous 24 games, that solid body of work, than I do just this one singular yet large defeat. So I think it could be, it could almost be one of those things that works to their favor. It's a huge wake-up call if he had lost the attention of some of his players, thinking they were really hot stuff and going places quick. I think that he's got their attention again, because a 41-point loss will humble you quickly. But that NC State team is one to watch for sure. And they ran into a buzzsaw. That Mikhail Brown Jr., the guard for Louisville, I think he had 45. A true freshman.
Wow.
And he's a big-time scorer. I think he was 11 of 16 from three-point territory against NC State. So that's pretty tough to deal with there. But I'm with you. I think NC State's a interesting team coming down the stretch.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to go with the fade team, my sell high, and I'm going to go off the grid in the West Coast Conference and say Pacific. It's weird to see this team at 103rd on Ken Pom. They play slow, so they're not, I guess there's not a ton of variance in their scoring, but they didn't play Gonzaga. I don't even think they played them this whole year, And did they play in St. Mary's? I'm trying to look. It's like, wait a minute. You also didn't even play St. Mary's. Now, when they played Santa Clara twice, they lost by 15 plus on both occasions, okay? Home and away. And you're sitting here with a team that's ranking this high for being a bully to like teams like Pepperdine and Oregon State and Seattle and Portland. It's like, yeah, you can bully them around, but once your rebound numbers are off, because once you actually play with some of these better, taller teams like St. Mary's this weekend, and you're going to be like, a 5 to 6 point or home dog, I think St. Mary's could blow your doors off. And I don't believe the specific team at all. And I'll be fading them. And you know what? I wanted to go off the grid a little bit on this one. So I don't know if you bet a lot of West Coast conference teams, but that's one I'm looking to fade this weekend.
Yeah, I do. And I'm looking at their schedule now, and I knew Pacific, I felt like they were a little bit overvalued in some of the power rating, the Ken Pom and the Torvik type sites. But, looking at their schedule here just real quickly, they really haven't beat anybody of note. And I think you've given them a good team here to fade Kiev, because looking at their schedule down the stretch, the last 4 regular season games, they host St. Mary's, they go to Washington State, they go to Gonzaga, then they host San Francisco. So those are all games that they can lose. And that's a little bit higher quality of opponent than they've built their resume on. So, yeah, I think you've got some good opportunities there. It'll be interesting to see if they can maybe carve out a 1-3 ATS record for you down the stretch and make you a little money in those final 4 regular season games.
I think so, and that's what we're going to do. And can you believe there's only 4 games left, regular season, for this? It's like, what happened, man? It is already flying by. West Coast has always started early, at least, so we have other big games to talk to. Speaking of big games, let's get into our big games that we're planning on talking about here. I don't know if you pick one for Friday, so maybe I should go first because I got a Friday one, Paul.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Wisconsin against Michigan State. It's actually Michigan State at Wisconsin. You know, I wrote down +2.5. I see that it already opened at +1.5. The total's a little higher than I expected at 145.5. But, you know, I'm not necessarily looking at the total here. I'm kind of hoping that Michigan State gets a little bit more love here and gets a few bets because I'm looking at the Wisconsin side here. I think that huge game for both. You know what's weird about them? Both teams back-to-back just beat Illinois. Now, the one that Michigan State beat Illinois at home went to overtime, and one guy took 6 steps with the ball and didn't even get called for a travel at Michigan State. And I was being like, okay, well, that's the Big Ten for you. Well, now Wisconsin gets to be at home. And Wisconsin, that game against against Illinois, they actually out-rebounded Illinois. They actually had less turnovers than Illinois, and they shot less free throws than Illinois. And I know Illinois complained a bit too, but hey, this team is hot right now. And Michigan State, if they have something, it's rebounding, and that helps them a hell of a lot at home with Jackson Kohler, Carson Cooper, Cohen Carr. But on the road, I don't think it's going to be working so well. And the Badgers, quietly, they rank 19th in defensive rebounding on KenPom. The Badgers have a 3-point advantage. They're going to be shooting a lot of them. They shoot over 50.8% of their attempts are threes. Big Ten, strong home court. Since January 7th, though, and I like this on Bart Torvik, and I mentioned it earlier this week on Spaces with Kyle Hunter, the Badgers ranked 22nd since January 7th on all in. Michigan State ranks 13th, but since February 1st, Wisconsin ranks 18th, and Michigan State ranks 57th. This Michigan State team is not hot down the stretch here. They got the win against Illinois. It's a letdown spot for them. And Wisconsin has some big men. Nolan Winter, Austin Rapp, Alexis Belikauskas. I think Wisconsin does enough here and hits them at home. And they also have the serious talent on that Wisconsin team too, because, you know, they have the guy from FAU and, who is actually on their championship team, which is, I think, a big part of the experience here with Nick Boyd. And John Blackwell's been on the team for a long time. Nick Boyd's playing great ball right now. I'm going to just take Wisconsin. I'm hoping to get 2.5, but if I have to money line it, I will.
Yeah. Hopefully you'll get at least 2 there. Wisconsin's playing well right now. I think around the turn of the new year, they lose a game there. Looking at which game I tell you, at home to Purdue, lost by 16. And I was thinking, this Wisconsin team's not as good as some of the other Badger teams of the past. They were 9-5 on the year at that point, 1-2 in conference. But since then, they have really they've had a resurgence. They beat win at Michigan, have some other good road wins as well, and they clearly have upped their game. And now coming off that road win at Illinois in Champaign, as you referenced. So, I like where you're coming from. Michigan State just doesn't you expect them by now to have kind of hit the gas a little bit and started that start some of that momentum move towards March. Of course, Tom Izzo, has a reputation of being Mr. March, but other than fears, and he obviously has some issues and which have been well chronicled. I'm not sure how many championship caliber players, if they have the number of championship caliber players that they have had in some past years. I don't know that they defend as well. They don't seem to have as many scores on the floor. So yeah, it'd have to be Wisconsin or nothing. You talked about playing unders, and hadn't been a great year for unders, and it hadn't been a quite great year either for underdog players. And I'm an underdog player, so this is the kind of spot, a home underdog that's playing well over a ranked opponent, kind of spot that I tend to gravitate towards. So even though underdogs hadn't fared well to this point, I've got to keep dancing with who brought me, so to speak, and I'm going to keep playing underdogs come heck or high water through the game. So yeah, I like what you're doing there.
All right, let's do it. Let's talk about A&M and Vandy. So this is you gave us a couple of hints earlier. A&M is going to go to Vandy here, and A&M has kind of been on a little bit of a slide here. I was on them last night, and I was really surprised to see them drop a kind of get-right spot at home against Missouri. I don't think that the shots weren't falling as good as they should have been, and the defense wasn't really there. Now they go to Vanderbilt, who it looks like a pretty balanced team. I'm curious what angle you're going to look on this one, because I'm predicting Vanderbilt as probably a 7 to 9 point favorite here.
Yeah, I use Ken Palm and then some other power rating systems that I follow, and I made it 8.5, hoping to get 8.5, maybe at least 8. But I'm looking at the underdog here, and like you, Kiev, I was on Texas A&M -6.5 last night in College Station. They were off 2 straight losses, and I thought, man, this is going to be, they're still a good team. They hadn't had any recent injuries, no reason to panic. It should be a spot where they show up with a good effort. But Missouri, led pretty much. It seemed like the whole second half was, A&M was kind of behind the 8 ball, so to speak, the whole game. And Missouri pulls it out, wins by a point, 86-85. So now A&M's skid is at 3 games. I'm undeterred, though. I'm going to stick with the Aggies here. I remain bullish on the Aggies. They have flourished in the first season of Bucky Ball, and that's your in your face, press at every opportunity style of basketball, that is employed by the first-year head coach there in College Station, Bucky McMillan. Looking ahead to the tournament, and I'll talk about this game a little bit more, but as is often the case in the tournament, and A&M will make the tournament unless they just continue to lose game after game. But in the tournament, it comes down to matchups. And if A&M gets the right matchups, I really think this team has a very legitimate chance to advance past the first weekend and get to the Sweet 16. So I still like this A&M team. I like that unique style. I think it could pose problems for some opponents. Vanderbilt, they got off to a 16-0 start. They were ranked as high as number 8 in the coaches poll. They won 3 of their last 4, I believe, but they did cool off a little bit as they hit the meat of their SEC schedule, actually 4-4 in their last 8 games. But I just like A&M here. Now they have 3 straight losses. There's a sense of urgency. You got to see their best shot. And, man, the Aggies have really been not a huge sample size, but they have been outstanding as the betting underdog this year. They are 6-1 against the spread when cast in the role of underdog, 6-0 against the spread when playing away from home as the underdog. So the Aggies at Vanderbilt, I project it to be 8.5, hoping to get at least 8. I'd probably take the Aggies at +7 or better. I don't think it's going to be any lower than 7, but I think the Aggies are going to hang tight with the Commodores in Nashville. Wouldn't be surprised at all to see A&M get the outright victory.
Hey, man, I'm with you. 6-1 against the spread away from home, 6-0 against the spread as an away underdog, which means they've been an underdog a lot. They're kind of overlooked here. I think it's a desperation spot now. I mean, they have to play better here. And, I look at Vanderbilt and I kind of feel like they're kind of the same as Texas A&M. It's almost like the same team in a way. Neither of them rebound that good. They don't have like the horses like Tennessee might have for doing that, or the horses that Florida has, the front court, right? But they do have some finesse there with some guard play, and they just kind of feel like they're equals to me. I know Vanderbilt had the much better start, but we're not handicapping the start here, and we're handicapping the situation. And, once Vanderbilt hit conference play, like you said, it got a little bit rougher for them. I will say Vanderbilt's been decent at home. They had a big game against Kentucky. But, beating Ole Miss by 3 points was a head-scratching game. Losing to Oklahoma by a point was very strange as well just recently. And they do have a couple injuries there with Duke Miles. And you wonder when he's coming back. I don't know when he's coming back. They won't tell us when he's coming back unless you practice at the practice. I'm going to assume he's not coming back, and even at like 7 would be too high with him out. So I'm with you on that one. I just wrote it down. Let's go to Kansas versus Iowa State. I wrote -4. A lot of these sites have Iowa State as a bigger favorite, but my thought is this: it's going to open up a little high. I think people are going to gravitate towards Kansas because of their big win without Peterson. So I'm gonna write it at 4, and I'm gonna call it at 4. But if it gets any better than 4, then I think that's good for me. If you know what I'm saying. I think Kansas is coming off the biggest win that they've had in years, and beating number 1 Arizona without their stud Darren Peterson is big. And most people are going to think that they just get better with Darren Peterson, but that's not how college basketball works, and we know that. Kansas has just been very, very strange away from the fog. And just because you play lights out without a guy does not mean that you can win the next week. The situation with Peterson is a head scratcher. I'm going to say that if he doesn't play, I'm going to be just as happy as if he does play, because I think it's kind of now that your team won without him like that in such a big game, I think it makes it weird. It just makes it weird, dude. Let's face it. He was sick last week. Maybe he was sick. There's all kinds of stuff going around, but he's quit. He's been out of too many games for us to give him the nod on that one. Iowa State coming off their worst game, and this was a clear look-ahead spot for them against TCU. 17 turnovers, 17 turnovers. They even lost the rebounding battle, which is very strange to them. And, the way the ball bounces off the rim is always unpredictable. But, man, Kansas coming off that win. Kansas ranks 333rd in away home splits on Haslametrics. They only shoot 51% effective field goal away from home. Iowa State shoots 61.4% effective field goal at home. This is all clones for me. I'm going to lay the 4. I'd probably lay it to higher than that. I wouldn't be as happy, but if it's 4, Iowa State is the play.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people, and I was on a podcast earlier today, and most of the people that I talk with, I think, have pretty strong opinions. And man, I hope you're right. I hope it opens at 4, but I think it's going to be higher. Hilton Coliseum is one of the strongest home court advantages in all of college basketball, and not just from a casual college basketball fan's perspective, but from the bookmakers' perspective. Talking at people who, to people regularly who make numbers and who understand numbers, man, that's a place they give a lot of credence to. So I think it's going to be, maybe 6 or 6.5. And this is going to be a game I'm going to play as well, up to about 6.5. I don't want to lay 7, but I just think situationally, the fact that Kansas is off that huge victory, Big Monday victory over Arizona, previously undefeated Arizona, number 1 Arizona. They had to do it without Darren Peterson, the star true freshman who complained of flu-like symptoms and did not play. And I think that's an effort that took a lot of, you've only got so much emotional collective team psyche, as I like to say, for a full season. And then you don't distribute it evenly. Some games get more of it and some games get less. And I think it's going to be tough for Kansas to come back with a supreme effort now on the road just a few days later. And then on the flip side, Iowa State just went into Fort Worth, as you mentioned, and got ambushed by TCU. And Iowa State's a very good basketball team. And they're very good at home. This is a Kansas team. You were talking about kind of a curious study looking at this Jayhawk team. They lost at both UCF and West Virginia. And neither one of those games was really close at the end. So I think Iowa State's going to get them here. I think they're probably going to win by double digits, but I'll lay up to probably 7 points. It'll be interesting to see where this number 1 opens and then 2, where it goes from there. But I think we're going to see a lot of sharp Iowa State money. I think a lot of people are anticipating the Cyclones coming off that Horned Frog loss with a big victory over KU.
Oh, yeah, and they got blown out in Kansas, which was their first loss, and I can assure you they've been thinking about that. They seem to blow out. They blow out everybody unless they're unless they lose almost. I mean, I know they're this recently against Baylor. It was only a 3-point victory, but that they have the bad games in twos. They had Kansas and Cincinnati lost, and now Baylor no cover, and against TCU a loss. I think they come back strong for this. So I'm with you. I think this is one where you might just have to shut your eyes about the number and just lay it. And yeah, I got wishful thinking, my man. I mean, see, the thing is that they're going to have the line in nowhere land if Peterson is going to announce himself at the very last second, which I freaking hate. And it makes me hate Kansas. I just having to deal with this shit every single game, and them not announcing if he's in until 10 minutes before the game is absolutely freaking brutal. Well, I don't care. I hope Iowa State pounds this team. Speaking of NC State, we talked a little bit about this, and NC State's got a pretty big game coming up here. This is another one that you're choosing here to talk about. Like I said, I think NC State's a little bit undervalued, and they're coming off a nasty loss to Miami, where Miami had a massive victory against North Carolina. What do you see in this game?
Yeah, we've talked a little bit already about the North Carolina State trip to Louisville, Kentucky. They lose by 41. 118-77, the worst loss in Will Wade's collegiate coaching career at this level, and it prompted the NC State coach, the first year NC State coach, to call the loss, quote, embarrassing, end quote, adding that the Wolfpack, quote, got slaughtered, end quote. So that pretty well tells the tale there. And then the night after NC State suffers that huge defeat at Louisville, this Miami team on Tuesday, they knock off 11th ranked North Carolina 75-66. Many in the announced crowd of just over 7,300 left their seats and stormed the floor to celebrate with their fellow Hurricanes. So I always like to fade teams in the game after a court storming. So when you couple that with the fact NC State's off such a big loss, Miami's off a victory where they came out of the stands and ran onto the floor, plus the fact, and probably the biggest factor here, NC State's just a really good basketball team. And that 41-point thrashing is not indicative of their season to this point. Miami off in arguably their biggest victory of the year. So what goes up usually comes down. So there's just a lot of dynamics that I really like here. Projecting NC State to be 5, I'd probably lay up to 6 with NC State. A lot of handicappers, I think, are overly influenced by recency bias. But I think veteran handicappers, guys who've been at it longer, maybe like yourself and maybe myself, look at it more as a favorable situation when you have these type of things working in your favor. And, you look at NC State, I think I touched on this earlier, but they lose by 41 at Louisville. But prior to that, they had won 6 straight games. And 2 of those games were at Clemson and at SMU. I mean, those are pretty good victories there by NC State. So I think they, back up their worst performance in years with one of their best of the season. I expect the Wolfpack to take care of business against the Canes.
It's strange to see for the Canes. I mean, they don't have to play Duke. What happened there? I'm trying to find Duke on their schedule. They haven't played a hard schedule. Their best win in ACC play was just this one against North Carolina, which we know North Carolina is very erratic. Miami's got, Virginia going to come up. They're going to have an SMU. They're going to have a Louisville. So they're going to have it tougher coming on up. But I do scratch my head at this schedule a little bit, not seeing Duke there. And and I find that weird. I think that NC State has definitely had it a lot harder than them. This year they had to play Kansas, Auburn, Texas, Seton Hall. Even like VCU and Boise State earlier is kind of tough in my opinion. I'm laying it too because Miami, their weakness NC State's weakness is defending the three. Miami does not shoot the three that much. They only rank 332nd in three-point attempts. But NC State has a very solid defensive interior, and I think that's where they're going to slow down Miami here, and Miami in the big letdown spot. I think Miami's just does not have the horses to win this game, so I'm with you as well. I'll lay up to 6.5. That's why I wrote 6.5, but that's probably as far as I'm going to go myself on this one. Purdue, Iowa pick total 142. This is one that I changed my tune completely when I handicapped it. I thought I was going to go one way, and I didn't just lay off like I usually do. I decided to go the other way. Huge Big Ten teams here in similar situation, Kansas and Iowa State, because you got Purdue that kind of had a nice win at Nebraska with Nebraska's record. It's not as big as beating Arizona, but they were on the road. And then you got Iowa. What a weird bad loss at Maryland. They just couldn't do anything at Maryland. So it's one of those buy low places a little bit here for Iowa. Here's my problem with Iowa. They've been a bully themselves. They smoke the bad teams that have issues, and they choke when facing better teams. I can't completely trust them. But when I look at the numbers, these teams are very identical. They play slow. They don't play the slowest, but they play slow. But they have extremely efficient offenses. And the pace is going to be a factor in this game, but I think that you're going to see a total go down some because of that. But I think there might be some value on the over at some point, and it might be 2 hours before the game. I don't know. But these teams score on few possessions. They do. And you're looking at a total of 142, 141. I think that this game will have people thinking under, but if you look, Iowa is one of the best overs teams out there right now at like over 66%. Over 60%, 62% to the over, 15-9. So I find that very strange myself. Purdue is close to 50%. They're 45.8%. So Purdue and this team's going to face off. But here's the kicker. Their defensive both look efficient, but it's because they both get steals. But as far as stopping the opponent's shot, neither of them are in the top 132 for effective field goal percentage on defense. They let teams score. I just think it's going to be a sneaky over. So I'm gonna call it 140 is my buy-in number. I think it could get down to that based upon people betting Big Ten unders, but it'll be a smaller play for me.
Yeah, Purdue won the first meeting there in West Lafayette, 79-72. So I know you'd love to see a similar score to that one. In that game, the teams combined to hit 18 of 39 three-pointers. So they shot the three-pointer pretty well, and both teams shot 53% overall from the field. So that kind of supports your argument there that these are not great defensive teams. So it'll be interesting there to see what happens. I don't really have a strong opinion on that one. I'm kind of like you as far as the side. Iowa doesn't really have enough meat on the hoof, so to speak. They don't have any really impressive victories. And Purdue, coming off the win at Nebraska, which was, a game where they got out to a huge lead, and then they lost the lead, and then they went to overtime. I mean, that's just a draining game. So don't have any interest in backing the Boilermakers after such a long and tenacious effort. So I'll be watching that total closely, and hope you get some buckets there and lots of shots and lots of guys failing to play defense.
Yeah, right. That's what you're looking for here. But their straight efficiency on offense is kind of what I'm going to buy into a little bit. It's weird. Purdue's third in offensive efficiency. Iowa's, believe it or not, 19th. And it's weird to see that on a slow pace. So I'm going to kind of just try to key in on that a little bit here myself. We have one more game that you picked before we go hodgepodge. And I believe this one's Georgia, Oklahoma.
That's correct.
All right. Well, Georgia versus Oklahoma. Georgia coming off a nasty loss to Florida. I thought it was actually a decent spot for Georgia last night, but they just showed who they were, team that can't rebound. And you got Oklahoma coming off a crazy big win at Vanderbilt. It's just very uncharacteristic type win. So now they're hosting Georgia at home, and I got to tell you, this looks like a pick 'em to me. It looks like a total of around 165 too.
Yeah, Georgia, they obviously got off to the huge start. They get off to a 13-1 start. They're ranked 18th nationally after the first weekend in January. And this was a Bulldog team that was picked by the league's media to finish 14th in the 16-team SEC. So they were not expected to be a factor at all this year in SEC play. But I hate to rain on the parade and bring this argument or this opinion, but I think their early season success was overstated. I mean, you look at their non-conference schedule, and I'll call it quite manageable. And I think that's being very kind and very nice to the Bulldogs. They were only, in fact, it's not like they were pulling off any upsets. In the non-conference, Georgia was an underdog one time. And they weren't an underdog to a juggernaut. They were an underdog at Florida State, a very mediocre at best Florida State team. And they were only getting 1.5 at Florida State. They beat the Seminoles decisively, but Georgia was only an underdog once in non-conference play. So that tells you the caliber of opposition that they defeated to get to that point. They did defeat Auburn in Athens in overtime in their SEC opener back on, I think it was maybe on January 3rd. But since that win over Auburn, they're only 4-5 in SEC play. The SEC, obviously, although not really top heavy, very talented top to bottom. There are no easy outs in the SEC. So Georgia, again, 4-5 in their last 9. Joe Lunardi, in his latest version of bracketology, currently projects Georgia to make the NCAA tournament as one of the last 4 teams in, meaning they would be able to avoid that first 4 round. But I kind of think Georgia, man, they're going to have to stop the bleeding if they're going to make the tournament. They can't just continue to lose, a lot of games. They've got to post some attractive victories that impress the committee, or they will not go dancing. And I'll say right now, I'll go out on a little bit of a limb because I think most people have kind of written Georgia into the tournament field. And I think the SEC is probably destined to get 10 teams in, and Georgia would probably be one of those. But I'll go on a limb and say Georgia's going to miss the NCAA tournament. And I think part of it's going to be due to the fact that I think Oklahoma's going to beat them on Saturday there in Norman. Much like Georgia, the Sooners got out to a nice start. They were 11-3 overall. They also had a pretty friendly non-conference schedule. But before they pulled that upset at Vanderbilt that you mentioned, they actually got out ahead of the Commodores, I think by double digits, and had to hold on for dear life late. Won that game 92-91 over the Commodores in Nashville. But prior to that, Oklahoma had dropped 9 straight games. A lot of them close games, a lot of them heartbreakers, but still a lot of close losses for the Sooners. They are currently in a 3-way tie for last place in the SEC at 2-9, but I think they're going to make it 2 in a row against a Georgia team that I think has seen its best days in the 2025-26 season. I'm hoping to get a point here, but like you, it's going to be around pick. Yeah. I would take Oklahoma probably. Sometimes these games that start out, between the 1.5s, the home dog especially can take money and turn into the home favorite. So I would take Oklahoma maybe up to -1, but I think Oklahoma's going to beat Georgia Saturday in Norman.
I might look at an over, to be honest with you, in this one. These teams play reckless and fast, and they only care about offensive rebounds. Both are going to have a massive second chance point opportunities here on any misses that they're chucking up threes. I don't disagree with the Oklahoma and the fact that Georgia is overrated. But once Georgia got into SEC play, they got punched in the mouth and they got set down. And when you lose confidence as a basketball team, it affects you, man. It affects you mentally. And you could see 4 of the 5 last losses here against Texas, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and, of course, that 20-point one by Florida. I think their offense shows up a bit against an Oklahoma team. But to be honest with you, I'm probably going to take an over here, and I like that. I like that side of it as well. Hodgepodge, so like this is going to be a massive weekend, and Valentine's Day is what it is. And, there's some big games. You got Gonzaga at Santa Clara. Gonzaga's – what's funny is like, is Gonzaga going to be a big favorite here? It's interesting to look at that because a lot of the efficiency sites have it pretty close to pick 'em. Ken Palm's got it by 4, but Bart Torvik's got it by 0.7. I assume that Gonzaga, just for their name and prowess, is going to be a 3-point favorite on the road here. But I'll tell you this, Santa Clara's playing some great ball, and I didn't believe in them for a while, and I got smoked earlier in the season when I tried to fade them against St. Mary's. And believe it or not, they play a little bit of defense there, and they're not getting to the line that much, but they're playing very well. Now, the problem with them is St. Mary's really is their only big win. You can't give them much for Xavier or Nevada or some of those teams back in November when they played. And Gonzaga kind of was out without their best player in Graham Ike, but now they're just missing Braden Huff. And I don't know if he's coming back, but I would probably lay Gonzaga, but I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, I was looking at the 4 there as well at Ken Palm, and I think it's probably close to 4. And like you said, as much as anything, I think just the historic resume of Gonzaga, I think sways the betting markets, especially in some of these quote unquote lesser conferences. But again, against, as you mentioned, not a whole lot of impressive victories, but they've currently won, I believe, 9 in a row, has Santa Clara, and did get the home victory over St. Mary's 62-54 back on January 17th, about 4 weeks ago. So, Gonzaga, I think we all kind of are still recovering from the loss at Portland last week, where they were a 22.5-point road favorite and lose outright to the Pilots. That was pretty stunning, but anything can happen on the road. And, it's one that I'll probably stay away from. I'm mostly an underdog player, and the Zags probably got a little bit of a wake-up call in Portland, Oregon last week, so they might not stub their toe again in this spot. But at the same time, I don't really like playing away favorites that much.
Not much. Maybe another over because, their last game went to 166. This is projected to be 158 in Ken Palm. And last year, Santa Clara beat them 103 to 99 at home. And so Santa Clara, probably some of the kids remember that, and they probably played out of their ass. Can they do it again? I would only look at an over if I had to bet it, but it wouldn't shock me if decides to play some defense and slow the game down and be weird, because they've done that to me before. You got a game like Texas Tech at Arizona. So is Arizona on a big bounce back here after the big loss? Because you're laying 9.5. I like Texas Tech, but Texas Tech doesn't play defense, and I couldn't fade Arizona in this spot no matter what. If I had to bet this, it would be Arizona minus the. Let's face it, it's going to be 10 or 11, right? Would it be Arizona for you?
Yeah, I couldn't play Texas Tech. JT Toppin remains one of the best players in all of college basketball, but they don't have quite the defensive prowess that they've had in some of the recent seasons where they've really been good. And also they don't have, I don't think, quite the ability to score from all the 5 spots on the floor. Toppin can't do it all, and I think they're too heavily reliant on JT Toppin. So going to Arizona, going to Tucson on Valentine's Day and playing an Arizona team that's going to be primed to give a peak effort after their first loss of the season I don't think is the recipe for success for the visitors from West Texas. The number's probably going to be a little too inflated, a little bit too heavy for me to jump on board with Zona, but yeah, it'd be Arizona or nothing for me.
Yeah, me too. Auburn at Arkansas is interesting. St. John's at Providence is a little bit interesting too. I think St. John's is just kind of like catching their stride in a way. I know Richard Pitino played him tough both games, but that's just a weird father-son dynamic where the guys just step it up, play out of their minds a little bit for Xavier. And I don't know, I'd be looking at it maybe if I'm getting a short favorite for St. John's. Providence is just a fast-paced team, and they can lose by a lot of points if they're not careful. TCU at Oklahoma State. You got TCU in a letdown spot. It'd be hard for me to bet Oklahoma State again after getting drilled by 40 at Arizona.
Yeah, this Oklahoma State team, they're obviously not one of the better teams in the Big 12, but at home, they've made a little bit of noise, and I think it might have been a neutral site game earlier in the year, but one of the very first games of the year, they beat Texas A&M. Oklahoma State did. So, I would don't know what I don't have that projected line right in front of me here, but looking at Oklahoma State's schedule and some of the teams they've beaten at home, most notably in their most recent home game, they beat BYU 99-92 on Wednesday, February 4th. So that was a big victory there for them. So beat UCF when they were ranked 25th by 11 there in Stillwater. So Oklahoma State's a team that might not compete with some of the better teams in the conference on the road, especially. But I think playing a team like TCU that's more their size and a team like TCU that is off such a significant victory, I like the spot there for Oklahoma State and might take a closer look at the Cowboys as I really dive into some of these games tomorrow that I hadn't looked as closely at as some of the others.
Yeah, I agree. I'm probably passing on that. Sundays, there's some interesting games. I'm not going to go against Illinois after losing 2 in a row. Indiana's going to Illinois. It's going to be a big spread, like 10.5, 11, probably, but I'm not sure if I'm going to lay it either. I think it's South Florida at Florida Atlantic's kind of interesting. I was just on South Florida last game against Wichita State, and they did cover for me and win outright, so that was fun. That was close to a pick 'em anyway. But there's some ugliness on Sunday, too. Maryland at Rutgers, 2 really bad bottom of the barrel Big Ten teams. You got a Seton Hall at Butler. Butler's actually probably going to be a slight favorite in that one. I don't even know what to think about Butler this year. I've stayed away from Butler games. But yeah, I wish we had bigger names on Sunday now that football's gone, Now that there's no NFL, it's like you could take half of those Saturday games, Paul, and move them to Sunday, and I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, I wish as well, that the Sunday game, the Sunday slate had a little more of a marquee flair to it. But, you're going to get the Big Ten, some Big Ten games on Sunday, and that Indiana and Illinois matchup, certainly probably the headliner, an early game there. Like you, I think Illinois is going to be too big of a favorite to gain my hard-earned pre-tax dollars there, but I'm not interested either in playing Indiana on the road against an Illinois team that's going to be a little bit disappointed and upset. And, you're going to have some American Conference action. Seems like North Texas plays on Sunday a lot. But not too much in terms of big games there, and nothing that really captures my imagination. Green Bay going to Milwaukee. Doug Gottlieb, since he quit being a radio host, man, the Phoenix, their against the spread record is solid. They have been a moneymaker. They're a short favorite tonight, so I'll be interested to see how they do in that role. But Gottlieb, love him, like him, or loathe him, his teams have been getting the money here lately, so I might take a look at the Phoenix there against Milwaukee.
Yeah, that's interesting. Gottlieb, I got burned on Gottlieb once this year. One was enough for me, man. I try to figure that out here with Green Bay, and I just don't know what to expect ever with this team. I feel like there's just a lot of variance. It's weird how slow they play. They rank 353rd in adjusted tempo. That is just crazy. And when you got Purdue Fort Wayne that plays a lot faster, it's interesting for the game today. But against IU Indy, that is a pace war, isn't it?
Oh yeah. When they play, when Green Bay plays IU Indy, that definitely is a two totally different styles of play there. It's interesting, coming out of the gate when the season started and people were finding out about IU Indy and the fact that they just crossed midcourt and threw it up. Everybody was kind of getting on the overs and the totals were just out of control. And a lot of sharps started playing the unders and really profited heavily by playing their games under because the totals just simply were too high. But their pace is incredible. And actually, trying to think who they played in there. And they played Milwaukee, I think, in their most recent game that went over two teams that like to play with pace a few days ago.
108 points, yeah. Went up to 180. They were great for overs in the very beginning, and then all of a sudden teams just slow it down against them, and it's just, by December there's these crazy totals that were hung started going under. So that was interesting. So now it's just kind of hit and miss with them, but I could see that happen to them again in this game. So not gonna necessarily jump into IU Indy here. But that's going to be another game for Sunday. But that brings up our next segment, Beer Bet Bangers. So this is any plus money shot, and I know that you have a creative one, so I'm just going to say I'm going to take Ohio State to win against Virginia. This is more of a distraction for Virginia than Ohio State. I always like to look at these late cross situations where the team that doesn't want to be distracted is forced into playing a non-con game. Well, that's Virginia right now because Virginia is 2 losses in the ACC. I mean, they are really contending. They got to hope for Duke to slip up a little bit more, but they're contending there. And now you get a neutral court game against Ohio State kind of smack dab in the way at Bridgestone Arena there. It's just tough to do that. And I think that Ohio State's game to get off the bubble here, try to get a quality win. So I always look at this situation, and I love these situations, and you're going to get plus 220 or something like that with Ohio State. So that's my beer bet banger.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State, obviously kind of a quasi home game for the Buckeyes there in Cleveland at Bridgestone. And you're right. They're the team that would figure Ohio State that would figure to have the emotional, edge in this type of game because they are clearly on the bubble. They've got some work to do to make the tournament, and certainly a victory over Virginia in Cleveland this weekend would be a quad win victory and would significantly bolster their resume. So I can certainly, that's a game that I have looked at, hoping to get about 4.5 points there with the Buckeyes. So that's one that I have been, kind of circling and doing a little work on, but I'll probably end up on the Buckeyes, maybe get a little bit on the money line as well, based on your recommendation there.
All right, man. What about you? What do you have for us for our beer bet banger?
Okay, I did something a little bit different here. I'll reel off a few, and these are going to be outrights to win the NCAA title, kind of a long shot and kind of a mid shot and then a somewhat shorter shot. But I'll start with the long shot, and I've talked about them a little bit. And I think I saw these numbers earlier all at DraftKings, and hopefully it's okay to say where I found the numbers, but I found them in a sports book that is licensed in many U.S. states. But Texas A&M is at 200-1 to win the NCAA tournament. And I'll make this point, Kiev, and I know there's a lot of debate about this, and people talk about it on social media. But when you're taking a long shot, or if a person who does this for more than just recreation is taking a long shot, I think the vast, vast majority of those guys, and I mean 99% plus, are not looking necessarily to cash it, but to be able to monetize it, to be able to leverage it and, perhaps make a profit. So people, debate that, all the time, should I hedge or you need to hold on to
it's just how big the number is and when, because you can get yourself in trouble if it ain't big enough, but you also have to have the financial backing if you start right away. Because for some reason that thing keeps going, you're going to be going to the bank here. And
yeah, I'll say this to a lot of people, and I don't mean this to be mean or whatever. A lot of people don't know how to hedge.
That's true.
They start hedging too early, or they don't understand the mathematics of it. And you can't just, you've got to have some method to your madness to be able to be successful at that. But, if A&M makes it to the Sweet 16 and you have Texas A&M at 200-1, you should be able to monetize that position and make a profit. So A&M at 200-1, Arkansas at 45-1. This Arkansas team has shown spurts in a year in college basketball where we have so many outstanding true freshmen. It's just a high density, it seems like, of those guys. Arkansas has one of the better ones in Darius Acuff Jr. I've watched him play several times this year, over 20 points a game, over 6 assists a game. I think he's a Detroit guy, so he can play a little basketball. Might have ended his high school career at IMG, if I'm not mistaken. But Darius Acuff Jr. is the real deal. So I like Arkansas at 45-1. And then Florida today, still there at DraftKings at 16-1 to win the national championship. And I think Florida's got about as good a chance as anybody. They got the best defensive player in the country. You've got experienced players like Thomas Houck, Alex Condon. They've got guys who have raised the gold ball before, obviously. So I like that. And then I'll throw one other in here, and we'll move on from the beer bet bangers. But I'm going to look to a tradition unlike any other. Hopefully that's not trademarked or whatever, and I can say that.
I don't think you're going to get arrested.
If I get arrested, come bail me out with some of the profits from the show.
All right.
But the Masters, I should just say the Masters, scratch that last statement. I'll just say the Masters at Augusta in April, you have got a guy who a lot of people don't like, Patrick Reed, 35 years old, went to Augusta State University, just miles from Augusta National Golf Club. And this guy, it's been well chronicled, a couple of weeks ago announced that he would be returning to the PGA Tour. They're going to make him sit in the corner until August, so he won't be able to join the tour until then. But he did not re-sign with the Live Tour. So he currently has a heavy schedule on the DP World Tour, which many of us know primarily as the European Tour. And Patrick Reed is on fire on the DP World Tour. He has won 2 of the last 3 events, won last week's event by 4 shots. He's the number 1 guy in the race to Dubai, which is basically their money list on the European Tour. He's moved all the way up to number 17 in the official world golf rankings. And the DP World Tour, not to say that it's the PGA Tour, they don't have that level of play, but it's not like he's playing in the Tuesday night scramble, at the local country club with a bunch of drunks, He's playing some pretty good golfers, there at the DP World Tour, and he's playing awfully well. And by the way, he's played some good golf at Augusta National Golf Club. He won the Masters back in 2018. And in the last 6 Masters, Patrick Reed has finished in the top 12 in 5 of the last 6, and finished 3rd last year. So Patrick Reed's a guy that just checks a lot of boxes. 35-1 currently at DK to win the Masters. 30-1 I saw him at Circa in downtown Las Vegas. And Little Birdie told me that faraway places, you can still find him at almost 44-1 to win the Masters. So I'm taking a little beer bet banger on Captain America. Some people call him Fat Pat. Other people call him other things. But I'm gonna be with Patrick Reed in the Masters come April in Augusta.
Look at that angle. I love it. That is a fantastic angle. He's got nothing else to do but go out there and win the course that he was next to for all those years of his life in college. That's something else. I may have to join you on that. I'm going to look that one up right now and see if I can dig that up. But what you guys should do is join this man, Mr. Paul Stone, and all of his betting escapades. Paul, could you let our listeners know where to get your great information in place?
Yeah, I've got a website, paulstonesports.org. Right now, it's kind of under transition. So probably the best way, if somebody wanted to get in contact with me for whatever purpose, the next couple of weeks, my email is paulstonesports@gmail.com. And then I am on Twitter, or on X, I should say, my X handle @paulstonesports. You could send me a DM, and I would certainly respond to that as well. So they can make contact with me through either of those methods at the present. And my website should be up and going, hopefully by the 1st of March at the latest.
All right. Well, make sure you guys get with Paul. It is madness time, and it is time to look at some golf as well. Paul, thanks again. Best of luck this weekend.
Same to you, Kiev. Great being with you, and good luck to you.
All right, my friends, to recap our plays, we got Wisconsin plus 1.5, Iowa State -4, and Purdue, Iowa over 140. Now, remember, if I have to go away from any of these, I will tweet that out before, when these lines come out. Obviously, Friday, they'll be out most of the day, but I will let you know if it's a little too fat or too thin on these plays. Right now, Wisconsin is definitely in at plus 1.5. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet us at The Oddsbreakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. Have a wonderful weekend and go get some winners.